So I was asked to address the state of alternative sources of capital. So for the last 15 years, I've been involved in seed funding. When I call seed funding, I mean the first 25,000, the first 100,000. Done it through a TV show, done it through a venture fund, did it through advising the government. I'm all about taking your technology and getting it into the market. I don't fund ideas, I don't fund dreams, I sure don't fund services by people who don't actually know what they're talking about. Right? A lot of people today are talking about, I want to teach X, Y, and Z the following. And the first question is always, well, what makes you an expert in that? So I'm not going to hold out that I'm an expert. According to our friends in the book world, 10,000 hours at something makes you an expert. I've done this for 15 years. So first and foremost, everything I'm about to say is my opinion only. The NAOO hereby disavows my opinions, as does Ryerson and any agency of the government. I can only talk for myself. And what I'm going to try to share with you is what I've learned funding a few hundred deals. You can find some of it in Hot or Not, the new book out, which shows you what goes on behind the scenes at Dragon's Den. I'm very blessed to be on the steering committee of the Digital Media Zone. I ran Ernst & Young's fund, Spencer Trask's fund, and I've learned a few things doing that. First, I want to tell you a little bit about the Ryerson Angel Network, which I'm now the chair of, as they were. We were founded in 2009, and we focus on Ryerson-based students, alumni, faculty, staff. We tend to like founders beneath the age of 35, and we thrive with first-time founders, people who this is their first startup. We've worked over the last few years to create the entrepreneurship department, to create the Dobson Seed Fund, to create the Digital Media Zone. And now, for the first time ever, we're starting to bring them all together. Our dean talked about the lean launchpad model at Stanford. Well, our faculty is going down to Stanford to be trained in it so that we can pilot it at Ryerson's campus starting in September. So we do all sorts of things here. The Start Me Up Ryerson has lots of resources. If you've heard shreds and IRAPs, but you have no idea what they're talking about, go to Start Me Up Ryerson. They give 10 classes a year, free to the public, on campus, with experts who will share with you the basics to get started. We have a Digital Media Zone, and Matt Saunders will be by later to talk a little bit about it. I know people have registered for our tour. We talk about student talent. Starting in the fall, our students in our fourth year entrepreneurship practice will no longer be allowed to graduate as entrepreneurship majors without having spent 8 months at a startup. So we're one of the first schools that's integrating experiential learning for our students. The Ryerson Angel Network isn't like other angel networks. Most angel networks have a set membership list, and every month they meet and they review 3 or 4 companies. We just can't do that. There's too many deals. We use an online deal system that notifies you when a new opportunity comes. Then I will give you a briefing. This is why I think it's worth your time. Then if you're interested, you can meet the company. The Ryerson Angel Network also backs several initiatives on campus. This year we have a speaker series starting in the fall sponsored by the Ryerson Angel Network with guys like Kevin O'Leary and John Sleeman and Jimmy Pattison. So Ryerson Angel Network is much less of a deal flow than it is an enhancement to what we already do. Starting Wednesdays at 7 p.m. on campus, we will be doing the Michael Atlas Show, which will feature these interviews. We also want to tell angels in the audience that you're automatically a member of the Ryerson Angel Network if you're a member of an other network group. So if you want to see the deals coming out of Ryerson that are typically first-time founders, 35 or less, Ryerson-based, we would love to put you on that list. Gagan and Jote, who are my number 1 and number 2 guys on the Ryerson Angel Network, are at the back. They'll be happy to help you. They'll be happy to get your deal in front of the Ryerson Angel Network. And now I'm going to ask them to put up their hands. Gagan and Jote's the one behind the door. There he is. Okay? They'll be happy. If you have a deal that fits these criteria, let us know. It doesn't cost anything. We don't charge you anything. That's not our role. Our role is to facilitate more money coming from my pockets as an investor into your pockets as a startup, because it gives my students experience to work, and it gives us a chance to get a return on our intellectual property. So that's the Ryerson Angel Network. I want to start this talk off, which will probably run about 20 minutes, with some very basic definitions. Right? A lot of people hear certain things like angels, and they wonder why they're not being nice. Right? We had someone tweeting that. Shouldn't angels be nicer? I have no idea what being nice has to do with an ROI on investment. Right? But this example, some people's minds are full, and some people are mindful. The same thing can happen if you have the wrong definition. So let's start with the very basics. A startup is a high-growth company that has the possibility of doing double-digit million returns in less than a decade. Right? It's usually based on scalable, proprietary technology. Yes, it has only a handful of people. Yes, it's less than 5 years old. But a startup is not a SME. A SME is a small and medium-sized enterprise. If you have 3 dry cleaners all over the city of Toronto, you're a SME. And there's nothing wrong with that. Our entire economy is based on the backbone of SMEs. But don't expect any angel to give you a penny. If you have a consulting business, a travel agency, that's not what angels fund. Angels, VCs, we fund startups. These massive, world-changing, great ideas. You'd think we'd be a lot safer. Show me the company that grows a few % every year. But we can't. Because we invest on a portfolio basis. We make 10 investments and we hope that a small number of them succeed, statistically. SMEs are fabulous. There's nothing wrong with running a SME. Taking over your parents' convenience store, running a bottle brewery. Nothing wrong with a restaurant. But it's not fundable. It doesn't meet the minimum tests to outperform the things that are fundable. Again, we're going to talk about where you can go if you are a SME. I'm not just going to tell you you can't get angel money. But know what you are and know the difference between startups and SMEs. But also know you're not alone in this confusion. A lot of our government programs fail to define the difference. And so a lot of SMEs get turned off when they don't get startup grants. But they don't qualify. So you have to understand the difference between a startup and a SME. Right? From a funding perspective, the blue line shows established SMEs. 49% get the money from commercial loans and financial institutions. Why? Because they have a store, they have assets, they have a fleet of taxi cabs. They can lend and borrow against them, there's security. Whereas business startups, 66% get their money from personal savings. Friends, family, founders, or fools, the people who believe in you the most. Neither of these say angels or VCs. A SME is not a startup, and a startup is not a SME. The same thing, an angel investor is not a VC. An angel investor tends to be money that they made themselves. Their only selection committee tends to be their spouse. They tend to go more gut and less 6 months of trailing revenue, right? And if you want to compare angels to less angelic forms, you've got a much easier choice, right? Working with a VC can be like from hell. I'm a professional investor. I use other people's money. Typically, VCs in this country are either washed-up engineers, washed-up service providers, or former CEOs. In the United States, 90% are former CEOs, right? People who've actually done it before. Canada, we tend to be more bankers, lawyers, engineers, or people from the science background. Less passionate, more formalities. I not only have to think your deal is a good deal, I got to think it's a good deal in comparison to the other 10 deals I see a week, and my partners see. Whereas an angel, just got to get them passionate, get them interested. There are differences between angels and VCs in heaven and hell. Right? The VC usually has more thousands. As a VC, I don't like to typically go less than $250,000 because the legals are going to cost me $40,000. That being said, there is a new breed of seed investors that are doing $25,000 a year, $50,000 there, and I'll talk about it. But in general, venture capitalists are people running a fund, a $100 million fund. You can't divide $100 million by $25,000 without having 100 companies to babysit. You just can't. So they tend to be bigger deals. We look for traction. What's traction? Sales. Month-over-month sales growth. You have an app, and it got 100 people the first month, 1,000 people the next month, 10,000 people the month after that, I'm in. But don't tell me it's not possible. We have students taking the summer off who launch ventures, and they have 100,000 users in 7 days. It's doable, but rare, because they're startups. That's what they're focused on. So VCs like traction. Traction is proof of concept. Why do we want proof of concept? Simple. Every entrepreneur loves their idea. How could you not? So I can't trust you when you tell me it's the greatest idea. I need some third-party evidence, right? When I started in venture capital in 1997 on Wall Street, we used to say proof of concept was you turn on the light switch, the light goes on, look, I proved my technology works. Not anymore. Now we want to turn on the light switch, the light goes on, and someone's willing to pay me to read under that light. No client, no traction. No person other than you that believes. I don't want to hear that you've got a great app. I want to see people saying it. Professional investors, more math, less passion. So now you got some of the terms that we talked about. And I want to address the issue as to why angels or investors say no. There's a commonly held mistaken belief that it's all about you. Your startup's funding and the probability that it gets an investor is based on you. Of course it would be based on you. Your management team, your sales, your product, your intellectual property. What do you mean it's not just based on you? Well, as an investor, I have to look at other deals. Does this deal fit with what I just did? Does this deal fit with what I've told the world? I'm a water investor. I only invest in water. And why did you invest in this company over here? Not in a hot space. 50% of the reason to say no has nothing to do with you. It has to do with, I only have 2 more deals that I can do this year, and I'm saving them for X and Y. It has to do that you want more money than my last deal, and it would be seen as unfair. Only 50% of an investment decision has to do with the company, right? They're trying to see, do you have any proof that will alleviate management risk? Do you have any proof that will alleviate magic risk? Do you have any proof that will lower market risk? Right? These are the 3 risks: management, market, and magic. The best way to prove these things is with sales. I had a colleague named Rick Siegel. He used to take great pleasure in telling companies, that'll never work. There's no market for it. And you know the only answer to any of those kind of statements is, here's a list of my customers. Here's a list of people paying me. So once you have a customer or someone's downloaded your app or they're paying premium, you lower the risk. Are these the right people? Because who cares? They did it. Is it 10 times better? Obviously someone else thought it was 10 times better. They paid you, whether it be 99 cents or $10. Market, will anyone care? If you have 1,000 downloads, they certainly care. You have to keep in mind that it's not just about you. That being said, it does have a little to do with you. So when I talk about what else is going on that's affecting people, you should be aware that it is not the same economy as it was when I started. I started in 1997, so I went through the dot-com boom, Web 2.0, and now this current rush. Right? When I started, it cost $5 million to go from idea to client sales. Even that first sale, and it took 3 years. So we used to fund companies with $5 million, which is what it took them to get to market. But a recent survey from the Kauffman Foundation says that in 2008, those costs were down 1/10, 500,000. Go forward another 4 years, they're down to 50,000. What's driving this? More users on the internet, more infrastructure pre-existing. In 1998, there wasn't PayPal. So if you wanted to transact, you had to build that part of your software too. Today, to get to first customers, it can typically cost, in the space I work in, digital, software, mobile, less than $50,000. Well, this is a problem. If I have a $500 million fund, I can't give it out $50,000 at a time. So what's happened is the market itself has changed. The amount of money that needs to be deployed has gone down. The number of VC funds has shrunk. The amount of money being invested has shrunk. This is in billions, by the way. The number of people who have a baseball card that says, hi, I'm a venture capitalist, has shrunk. The number of professional firms that are listed with the National Venture Capital Association has shrunk. Why? Because they were built to do $100 million deals, not $50,000 deals. So the landscape has changed. In 1998, when I told people you weren't going to get angel funding, you weren't going to get VC funding, there was nothing else to say. It is now a great time to be looking for startup capital. There are many alternatives that never existed before. But they're all going to have a pound of flesh. Sometimes that pound of flesh is filling out government forms till you're blue in the face. Sometimes that pound of flesh is begging and borrowing and stealing to sign customers. There's nothing free. You want the money, you're going to trade for it. But what I want to talk to you a little bit is about these changes. This is a similar slide to what Andy showed. I call it the startup financing cycle, right? You start by losing money, building a product, start by selling it, and boom, you got a little revenue and away you go. All you need to take away from this is that there's different roles for different people. Angels, friends and family are up here. Seed capital, early stage VCs, later stage VCs. But what they all look for is different. They're all based on different metrics. It is unlikely anyone right of here is going to be excited about a pre-revenue company. It's unlikely anyone here is going to have the ability to get into a deal that has $1 million of revenue. It's a different market. But now, for the first time in a long time, there are options. This is another version of the spectrum of financing. This one we use in class. On the y-axis, we put the level of investment risk. How risky of a deal is it? On the x-axis, we put the stage, right? So I call seed ventures pre-revenue. Startups, early revenue. Early growth when you're expanding. Established when you're going global, right? Commercial banks love to give you money when you don't need it, right? They'll stand up there and they'll say, we are seed investors. If you have 10 million in revenue, we would be delighted to back you. It's definitional. There's no book that says a seed investor must look like this. Andy said he wanted to fund stuff that was going global. Everything is contextualized. Even worse, this spectrum shifts. In 1998, everything was to the far left. Banks wanted to do startups. High net worth wanted to do startups. But then money dries up and everything shifts to the right. It's a supply-demand curve that's part of a living, breathing economic system. You have to find out what works for you. You have to find out where what you're offering matches with what they want. The key is not to pick one. The key is to say where I am and to focus on that. You don't have your first customers, look to friends and family because nobody else is going to believe you. They're just not. Because other people have other offers. It's about finding a sink. So where can you go if investors say no? Here's option one. Funding from clients, also known as bootstrapping, also known as being cheap, also known as being non-dilutive, all the same thing. I'm a consultant. I've learned that this industry has a need. My customers are paying me to build a solution. I take that solution, I productize it, I make it available for other people, not a one-off thing. I stick it on the internet, allow them to download it as software as a service, and I've converted from a consulting business to a product business. That's a good thing. You use future clients to pay you now. We talked about Kickstarter. We're going to talk about Kickstarter and crowdfunding. The Pebble watch. I have a design, but I don't have $500,000 to create a factory to make the watch. For the first time ever, people are buying in advance for consumer products. But that's been going on for years. Law firms bought law firm software before it even existed. They had it written for them. Then that software developer said, I could probably sell it to other law firms. And they scale it up. So if angels say no, one of the places I recommend is future clients. That's really smart money. Because you can ask your client, who's willing to buy something that doesn't exist yet, what would you like it to be? Should it be pink or should it be blue? Should it be tall or should it be fat? Right? That's even better than angels, because these are the people who are going to buy your product. Right? Users, clients, advertisers, anyone who puts up first, we call funding from future clients or bootstrapping. A new wave has started called crowdfunding. And crowdfunding is when you take a lot of people and they all contribute a little money. So I need to raise $50,000 for my startup. I could go to Andy and ask for $50,000. I could go to the government and try to get some SHRED or IRAP claims, or I could put something on a website that explains, I'm looking to raise $50,000. Anyone who supports me for $5 will get a free copy of the app. Anyone who supports me for $10 will get a t-shirt, right? That's crowdfunding. Crowdfunding is on the edge of coming to startup financing. The SEC, which is the American Securities Agency, is currently reviewing the order of the president through the Jobs Act to allow equity to be traded. Currently, I can give $5 and I get a t-shirt. I can't give $5 and take back equity. The reason for that is simple. Wall Street is required since the Great Depression to facilitate investment. We created the rules around prospectuses, around having a broker, because we wanted to protect the unsophisticated. Little old ladies in Nunavut who are seeing flashy presentations and convinced to invest. We have all these rules to protect them. Crowdfunding in startups is a deregulation by the federal government that says, for the first time ever, you can raise money from a community without a prospectus. Is it good? Is it bad? I really don't care. Is evolution good or bad? It isn't. It just is. Crowdfunding is coming. Will it end up being the next savings and loan crisis? Or will it be the key to the recovery of the American people? I'm sure it'll be a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B, and a whole bunch of things we didn't foresee. Crowdfunding in Canada. is in the minds of Parliament. I've been called in the last 9 days by several different levels and agencies to ask for opinions. Should we allow this? Should we not allow this? Is this good for entrepreneurs? Is this good for Canada? I don't know. But crowdfunding is coming, crowdfunding is here, and it is an alternative to angel investment. Here's a couple examples. Crowdfunding. There's a great book a friend of mine, Kevin, wrote called The Crowdfunding Revolution. But here are just a few examples of crowdfunding happening today. Some of them funding products, some of them funding music, some of them funding movies, some of them funding software, some of them not even sure, old-fashioned. Right? So there's almost a different type of crowdfunding vehicle for everything. There are crowdfunding vehicles for just social ventures. People who have a double bottom line, profit and saving the whales. There are sites that just focus on that. That never existed. That is the coolest thing ever. To be able to sell 1,000 watches before I make one of them. Because if no one buys them, maybe no one cares. And then maybe I shouldn't spend my money on making watches. Crowdfunding. We're not taking questions. Crowdfunding is happening all over the world. Quick map showing some of them. The larger the red dot, the more emphasis it's having in the media. You can see which one has the big one. Right? The second place that I think we can fund today that we didn't fund before are incubators and accelerators. These are things like the Y Combinators, the extreme startup, the digital media zone. The difference between an incubator and an accelerator is a completely made up one. It's just a term of art. An accelerator typically gives capital as well as rent and mentorship and education, where an incubator tends to give information, knowledge, mentorship, but no cash. But again, there are incubators that call themselves accelerators and accelerators that call themselves incubators. But generally, this is the deal. Every 6 months, they take 5 to 10 startups and they stick them together in a cohort. Then they assign one mentor to each and every one of the startups. Then they give that person $25,000 to spend over the next 120 days. And 6 months later, they have to demo their product. They either deliver a product that people want, or they move on to other things. This model, called the Y Combinator model, named after Graham's Y Combinator in Silicon Valley, is spreading across the world. There is no proof to date that it works. I want to be really clear about that. We have anecdotal evidence from Y Combinator, Paul Graham, the founder of Y Combinator, that his portfolio is worth $3 to $4 billion on paper. So he's invested in more than 100 companies at $25,000 a pop, so $2.5 million over the last 3 to 4 years. And according to him, that portfolio is worth $3 to $4 billion. But that isn't exits. That isn't companies that are listed. And if you move away from Y Combinator and you look to more recent entries, there's no stats. There are no stats that prove being an accelerator will be successful. But that's because it's only 24 months old. In a couple of years, we'll look back and do the statistical analysis. But if you are young, if you lack more than just capital, these incubators are a godsend, right? Because they give you the cash, they give you physical space. On campus, we have 60,000 square feet. By October, we're moving to 100,000 square feet. We may even launch our own program like this. This is happening around the world and throughout Ontario. If you have a great business in Ontario, another place to go for the seed capital is incubators and accelerators. I couldn't, of course, not push our own. Some lovely pictures of our students. We currently have 47 teams and 14 alumni teams. We've created almost 500 jobs, 90 projects over the first 24 months at the DMZ. That's our incubators called the Digital Media Zone. Right? You can find rankings online for a number of deals. Here are the top 10 in the United States. The third place that you can get was it something I said? That is not the annoying tone that forces you to leave. Do not run away. You gotta close that door.
Okay.
No, don't push it again.
Okay.
That'll keep it open. The third source of funding, friends and family. Right? Pardon me?
Love money.
Love money, absolutely. Love money. 85% support their startups from savings, consulting work, and the other, we're lying. No, the other are seeking it from friends and family. So friends and family is, there's a provision in the Securities Act that says you can raise it from friends and family because they know you well enough that you won't try to screw them. Is it true or not? I don't know. There are lots you can do to make your friends and family round go crazy bad. I'll give you a few. If you're going to accept money from 20 different people, don't take them in one at a time. Force them into a company together and let that be your investor. Otherwise, when Andy comes in, he's going to have to talk to all 20 of them, and you'll never get a deal. And all 20 people calling you each and every day will make you nuts. Use a shareholders agreement, okay? I admit that Dragon's Den isn't 100% true. No one walks into a company and dictates the terms, 30% for $300,000, right? They also don't take 50% of a company. I've never taken more than 32%, okay? I wouldn't, because otherwise why would you get out of bed if I own half your company and I'm not getting out of bed? If you're going to work there every day, you should own the majority of it, not me. But you should also not be so naive as to think my control of the company has anything to do with the amount of shares I own. I own one of your shares, I control the entire company. Because I'll make you sign a shareholders agreement, which is a long list of terms that says these are my rights. See, the government has the Canadian Business Corporations Act, and it says the majority person in a vote wins most issues. But I don't want that. I want my vote to count more. So I do a shareholders agreement. You don't like it? Don't take a deal. I'm not aware of any angel, sorry, I shouldn't say it. I'm not aware of any sane angel or professional VC that doesn't use a shareholders agreement. And it says you can't write a check larger than $50,000 and outside the board-approved budget without my signature. Otherwise, you're going to write a check to yourself, possibly. Shareholders agreements give super rights to investors, and that's how we control companies. We don't control it like on TV because we own 50%. That's just something they do to try to get more equity. Always maximize your tax credits. Always structure so that you can make great advantage of our tax system. Finally, consider not setting valuation, right? How much is my company worth today? How can you know? So you're going to argue that it's worth $2 million. No, it's worth $200 million. How are you going to know? So one of my favorite things to do is to have floating valuations. I'm not going to tell you what percentage of the company you're going to get. Next year, when we raise a large round, you will come in on those terms, plus a little extra for being early. Then we don't have to argue about valuation. You don't have to convince me you have a $100 million company that you created yesterday. And I don't have to convince you that you're going to be disappointed. I can just set valuation as 3 times revenue at the end of the year. You have 0 revenue, I own your company. Pound of flesh. There are lots and lots of different ways to fund a company. Some of the more interesting ones that are coming out. Angel List. It's like Craigslist, but less creepy. Right? Angel List is like Kijiji, but with more useful things. Angel List is angels who are actually writing checks. You can't get on Angel List unless you can prove you've made investments. And they're very scrupulous. It's free. Our friends at the Kauffman Foundation funded it. It's Craigslist for startups. It gives you the first time ever a place to reach out for angel investors. It also screens each and every angel investor. So people who are actually doing deals are there. Fabulous resource. Then there are groups like Demo Camp and Startup Nation where you can mix and mingle. One of my favorites, Startup Weekend. Anyone ever been to a Startup Weekend? Fabulous experience. You start on Friday. 10 or 15 people come in with ideas. They talk about the ideas. They break into teams. And by Sunday night, they have a prototype. Now, are you going to cure cancer that way? I don't think so. But across the world, more than 100 cities hosted Startup Weekend. And dozens of them have companies still going strong. Zarly is my favorite company from Startup Weekend. They have the Founder Institute, which says, if you know you want to be a founder, but you don't know your idea, come here. We have a digital media specialization course at Ryerson, where for 12 weeks, you don't write any code. You just figure out the opportunity. You just meet with customers, start to understand things. These never existed 15 years ago. When I told people they were unfundable, all I could do is give them Kleenex. Now, you can do so much more. Toronto has become a hub of entrepreneurship, and hopefully Ryerson, being a university for Toronto, will become the hub as well. We run Startup Drinks, Startup Weekend on campus. All you need to do is go get a little piece of flyer called Start Me Up Ryerson, and it lists all the free stuff that your taxpayer money is going to fund. Make use of it. Take up the offer. Leverage those who are in the know. So where to go when funders say no? Well, future customers, crowdfunding, accelerators, and incubators are some of the ideas. Friends and family are some of the ideas. I could go on forever. As a professor, I'm a bit of a narcissist, so all of you staring at me is good. I'll give you some more resources. Some of my favorite books that I get all my students to read: The Art of the Start by Kawasaki, Founders at Work, The Lean Startup, mandatory reading. Innovator's Dilemma, The Purple Cow, mandatory. Some of my favorite new books for the last 12 or 24 months: Brad Feld, I wish I grew up to be Brad Feld, wrote a great book called Do More Faster. He took the lessons from Techstars, one of the world's leading incubators, and had them tell them to other entrepreneurs in their own words. For those of you struggling to learn how to make your money out of your great value proposition, Business Model Generation is a fabulous guide to that. There is stuff out there. All you have to do is look for it. I know that we're running behind. I will try to take 1 or 2 questions, but if you have questions, and it's a really tough audience. That's usually a really cute picture. I usually get a great response from my action figure. How many other professors have their own action figure? You can email me at sean.wise@ryerson.ca. I'll turn it over to Paul so he can coordinate the questions, because I don't know how much time we have left. Thank you very much for attending, and thank you for sharing the floor.